This recording was made December 27th, 1979 at our home in Gillette, Wyoming. My parents, Otto and Delia Rosie, are here, and they're going to answer a few questions about their past and their childhood and so forth. So we'll just start now. Anybody have any questions?
Well, I want to hear some things about what the first economic depression was like and what brought it about, and if you think it's going to happen again.
Well, I would say let's start at the first place. The parents left Europe on account of things going upside down over there. Like my parents came to Selby, South Dakota in 1905. There was no place to rent or buy or stay, so he got a job working on the railroad off and on, and so the section crew gave him a room upstairs in the section house. And then whenever there was a call for help or help needed, then Dad would work on the section, and Mother would unload train cars with coal into the coal bin, and they got a big pay of 25 cents a ton because the railroad car had to be moved out of there in so many days. So when Dad worked on the section, naturally he couldn't shovel coal. And in order to keep the money from both places, then Mother unloaded the coal. So the railroad car would go back. And then I don't know how long they stayed there, possibly a year. And then they found out in Goodrich, North Dakota, a blacksmith shop for sale. And being Dad wasn't a graduated blacksmith from the old country, why, he bought the blacksmith shop then in Goodrich. And in the Army, he had gotten a championship silver watch engraved in ruby jewels. We still have that to this day for taking championship. And not too many times you got championship in the old country. When you got championship there, you earned it. It wasn't a piece of paper somebody wrote out. You earned it. And so then he worked in Goodrich for several years. Then when he played out on his feet, walking back and forth in the blacksmith shop and doing everything by hand, then they went to look for homestead land. Then they moved down to Phoenix Township, to Arena, North Dakota, and then they got a quarter of land, 160 acres, to be approved. And there we lived on that until, let me see, one year would that be? About 1936, I would say. Then after Dad died, my Mother moved to Wing. But in between the act, as far back as I can remember, the actual depression was about 1918, when the First World War was on. And then in order to buy 100 pounds of flour, you had to buy 100 pounds of other stuff to go with it, called it subsidy. You might have to buy some grits or maybe coffee or something like that in order to get the flour. You had to buy so much other junk.
Yeah.
And
All over your house first.
Why was that? What was the reason for
well,
Yeah.
a trick, I suppose, like everything else. Why was it? I mean,
I didn't talk
that?
to
It
her
was
very much.
even if you didn't need it, or
sure, even
was
if you didn't need
you
it. Yeah.
you had to use your own money then? It wasn't any money given to you?
No. There's no surplus office or nothing.
Well, it wasn't to get rid of products then or something, was it?
Must have been. We still don't know. They call it subsidy. They had to buy other stuff. Sugar at that time was about $10 a hundred, and I have no idea what the flour was. Probably could have been about $5 a hundred. But you had to buy that, and then of course cattle price shot up. My dad sold a bull at that time, got $325. That was the talk of the country. And in 1933 about, or 1932, he sold a carload of cattle for $325.
$325?
Yeah, for a carload.
And that was in 1923 about?
No, in about 32, 33 in 1932, 33.
And then when he got 3.5 for that bull, what when was that about?
In 1918, during the war, got $325 for one bull. And then the cattle dropped down to where in 32, during the Depression, he sold the whole carload for 3.25, and the fella that bought the cattle was going to give Dad $100 back if he takes the cattle home. So that would have left $225 for a carload.
Well, how many animals do you suppose would have fit in a carload?
Oh, about 30.
30 head.
About 30 animals. And another buyer there, he bought cattle and hogs, and he shipped the carload of hogs, and he was waiting for his receipt. And when he got to the depot, he owed $1.25 for freight. He had to pay the railroad company $1.25 freight yet. The hogs didn't pay for the freight.
And that was in when?
That was in Regan, yeah.
And
I
that was
guess
about
they
what
had,
what
but in
time
the-
what time in history?
Well, that could have been,
In the 30s?
that was in the 30s also, yes. Hog was $3.25, you could buy a 100-pound hog, easy.
$3.25.
$3.25 for a pretty good sized hog. Eggs were 7 cents a dozen, and I sold rye for 9 cents a bushel, and wheat for 23.
What was an average day's wage then?
Well, I worked the whole month, and they were going to pay me with $8. So the good wage was about $1.25 a day, and the running wage, I don't know, I would say maybe 50 cents.
How come things went down so bad?
Well, there was no money going around. I suppose the millionaire pulled the money in, and there was none going.
There wasn't any money circulating, is what
No
you're
money
saying.
circulating. The banks went broke. All the money was pulled in. You couldn't borrow any money. You didn't have nothing to turn things with. Then you'd raise hogs, and we went to the neighbor and husked corn by hand. 50 bushels for him and 50 bushels for us. But it took a whole day to husk one load, and another whole day to husk one for yourself, because the cobs were only 5-6 inches long, and it took many of them to fill a box. Then,
Anyway, finish it.
and then you fed your hogs the corn that you supposedly got for nothing, for the labor. And then you made your sausage and salted your pork down. That was your bacon. Smoked it with hickory wood and stored it away that way. And the beef you probably had pretty well cured, and then you'd bury it under the grain, the wheat, to keep it. And geese then, you probably, I don't know how many geese we raised, approximately, possibly 20 geese or so you had. Well, they brought from $2.70 to $3.70 a goose. You'd pick it and pack it and ship it. And turkeys, they run from about 3.5 to, I would roughly say, maybe the best gobbler, $7. You shipped them. Well, then when you got the check, you brought your winter supply of coal and flour, and that was probably it. Then you had nothing else to go by anymore. That was the whole wages, and didn't have money, to pay any debts. And this went along for 7 years. So every year you try to plant a little weed, garden stuff, whatever it was, and drought. And a cloud come up, you thought, well, this time it's going to rain. And we probably beat it for home. By the time we got home, the sun was shining again. And no matter how far you dug down, it was dry. And that's the way the things went. And eggs, we probably, when the chickens were laying, you took the eggs and probably just kept them in the cool spot in a house, no refrigeration, trying to save the eggs for the winter if you needed 1 or 2 for bacon. And butter, they actually might say rendered the butter or fried it down and put it in crocks and then used that. I don't know if you ever ate any of that, did you?
Huh.
Try it sometime. Just melt the butter down like lard and then let it chill again and just try it. It still has a buttery taste.
Does it keep then, huh?
But that way it keeps, see? And meat was canned in crocks, a layer of sausage or meat, and then you pour that level with lard. Then you put another layer of meat and lard over the top. That's the way it kept building up. And that would keep, because especially sausage, see, or salt pork. Then in the summer, you generally had a well pit or a good cellar. Then you peel off one layer of lard, and that's what you use. And then a few days later, or next Sunday or whatever, you peeled off the other layer. And that's the way that was used. And, milk, you probably had 1 or 2 cows that would milk, and that's what you lived on. A little bit of milk, and your own groceries you practically had. And the next year you'd try and plant again. Horses, we didn't have enough hay, I know, one year for spring's work. We only had about 4 or 5 loads left, so what happened? We would take the horses and go out on the field maybe 10, 11 o'clock, and we'd work till 4, and then unhitch them so they'd eat, and it was done for that day. And sometimes we'd keep them overnight in the barn and feed them that little hay we had, and that's the way we put our crop in. No gasoline or nothing. My uncle had a brand new tractor and had it set in the fence because he couldn't buy a gallon of gas to use it.
Was that because of the war?
No, that was after the war already, on account of the Depression. No money. I remember going to town with him. Oh, that could have been, I wouldn't know exactly what year. I would say now that could be 31, 32. And he would buy 1 gallon of gas for that Model A, and that was 20 cents, and a little sack of salt, they were a dime, and maybe a box of oatmeal or something, that was it. That was the grocery shopping. And they would take barley and things like that and roast them and grind it up and make postum. That was their drinks. And that's the way it operated for about 7 years. Nothing. The ranch boys got $12 a month, and they had to haul hay or whatever it was every day. There was no such a thing, the weather was too bad. The weather was good every day for them, no matter how far. And then they would only hire so many because they didn't need any more. I tried to work there and I couldn't even get on, even at $12 a month. So nobody had nothing. So you couldn't buy a job. All right, then when I moved to Wing, I wasn't married, so I couldn't get no government help. I couldn't work on these projects. And I couldn't work no place else either because nobody hired you. Didn't need anybody. What are you going to eat?
Was that these projects, the CCC and WPA?
Yeah,
You had to be
WPA.
married to...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Single guy was out. So what are you going to do? Sure, I didn't have to starve. I still had parents. But at the same time, what are you going to do? What are you going to do now if she goes down here and can't get a job because she isn't married, but she gets hungry anyway? See? At any price. Even if she wants to work for the board and room. Then when I was in town already, I stayed at Bill, at my brother's, for $12 a month, room and board. Now that was a gift. Besides other stuff he helped get. He was barber, he got whole 35 cents for a haircut. So he had big money. So he helped me once in a while up the shop after supper in the evening and things like that. Then later on I stayed at Weber's they charged me $14, room and board. And then there was a few months I couldn't even pay them. Well, they were poor people too. So then I had to go out to the places that owed me to see if I could collect some. And so she even mended my socks and stuff, old lady Weber. Well, that wasn't even in the deal. So one day I said to her, I says, I wouldn't like for her to fix my clothing. She said, why? She kind of got shocked, figured it wasn't good enough, see.
Mm-hmm.
I said, no, your work is excellent. But I says, I can't pay you. She says, there's a lot of people haven't paid me. So it wouldn't make any difference if you can't either. And, well, then one night I went out collecting. Well, then I got to old man Dagner. He had a 100-pound sack of flour in the corner. And he owed me some money. So I asked him if he could give me a little bit of money. And, well, no, he said, first I have to see that I get that in the corner there, that flour. I said, yes, Mr. Dagner, 100% right. But I said, did you know that the people I stay are the same age you are, and they get hungry too? I says, why didn't you buy 50 pounds and give me for the other 50? Then I'd give them to that lady, and then that lady'd have something to eat. By the time that's used up, maybe there'd be something else you could do. That's right, he said. So he went in the other room and he got $1 or whatever it was there and gave me. Then I went to a few other places, and then I could pay my board and room up at these people. Cleaned that up. That's the way it was. He overhauled the whole car for $5. Well, who wants to start at anything for $5? That takes you 3-4 days or a week. And cold weather. The first year I was in town, there was, what was it? 30 below, I guess, for 31 days. And one time,
That was cold.
yeah, in 36, I never got above zero for, I guess, 42 days. And I think it was 36 or 7, the train didn't come to town. Everything was drifted shut for 40-some days. No train, nothing. And then the truck line from Wing to Bismarck, all the citizens there volunteered to shovel out. And I got pictures where the snow was handled 3 times. And I was on top of the snowbank and taking a picture down on the roof on the van, and the van is about 10 feet high or 12. That deep the cut was. I got pictures of that.
And they shovel that all by hand?
By hand. One guy threw it to the other guy up, and finally it was up over the hill. And I took pictures of that. And we shoveled that all the way down to Sterling. And then at Gibson, where Benny Crane lives now, they asked us in for dinner. That's as far as they got by dinner time. And from then on south it was better, and we just about got to Sterling that the snowplow met us. Then they got some groceries to town, and things like that.
Well, you were saying that interest was very high yet at that
Yeah.
same time.
Well, then when my folks moved out to the homestead, Dad bought 2 horses, and his mother-in-law bought 2, or what you might say, brother-in-law maybe in a way. And they hitched them up in one plow. Well, they were supposed to plow a little for him, and then a little for us. Lightning storm came up and killed the 2. But the interest money was 12%. They were $325, the team. Well, then you had to borrow money again to buy another team because this one hadn't turned over an acre yet. And this interest was going, plus the other interest, plus you had the moving on hand from Goodrich out, trying to build fence, make a well, and all of that in cahoots. And I think for the well, it cost 16% interest, I'm pretty sure, that he charged. So what happened then? Well, then the well driller, if the hole was dry, he charged half. If you had water, it was full price. But then a lot of people couldn't pay, so he would take a calf or a heifer for interest, at least. Well, how would you get a big herd if you give different guys a calf or a cow or something on interest. Maybe that's the calf or a good heifer that you wanted to keep for a cow in a few years. And those are some of the things. And it's pretty hard to explain how really all of the things have worked out. But then one of the better things worked out when Roosevelt took over. And he made the banks guarantee the money. And after the government guaranteed the money, then of course things started rolling for the simple reason that a lot of people that had money kept it at home or buried or something, and it was not in circulation. See? And then the WPA came in, and the banks were stabilized, and then the things started rolling. And of course then at the same time we got more rain and little better crops, and everything started going. But then you worked
Well, the only thing that sticks out in my mind is when I was 15 years old, I was asked to work up at Mercer for some people. And the mother was an invalid for a year when I started to work there. She had 17 children, but only 7 of them were living. And I asked what happened, you know, because she lost the other 10. And oh, they said one time she ate some homemade sausage that wasn't good anymore. And of course lots of them were miscarriages she had too. And I had to take care of a 7-room house. They had 4 boys and Mister at home. I did all the washing with a motor machine, you know, those gasoline engine driven. I had to hang them out, iron everything, scrub all the floors. I baked bread about twice a week, and they were a family that really liked to eat noodles. So I made a lot of noodles. Of course, every time I baked bread, I had to make some dumplings too. And I took care of the garden, helped with chores, and sometimes she could get out of bed and get on the pot. You know, those days you had to depend on that. And get back in bed. And sometimes she fell over with the pot and laid in the mess. No matter what I was into, I had to go and give her her bath, clean her up, get her back in bed, clean up the mess as good as I could, then go back to my work. And she couldn't talk either. Sometimes she wanted to say something, you know, or ask something. And she'd kind of go with her lips, and I'd try to figure out, and I'd guess, do you want this or do you want that? Well, she couldn't tell me, I couldn't understand, and of course the first thing she did was cry, and of course I stood and cried with her. Couldn't help her. So that was really hard, I tell you, and I got $10 a month.
Well,
So
was that the place you worked at because your father had died about that time? Or
no, not that time yet.
no, he had died.
he had died before that?
Yeah, I was 13 when Dad died.
And then you were...
Now I was 15.
Then at 13, then you were still on the farm?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
Now, you said one time that they had foreclosed on your mother then, because
Yeah.
your father was dead.
Yeah, that was that fall. See, he died in February, and I was 13 in February, and then in the fall, in September, is when they foreclosed on us. Mm-hmm.
But then you remained on that farm?
Yes.
Was it paid for, or it was a homestead then?
No, it wasn't.
I really
It wasn't a
wasn't.
homestead?
Yeah.
Didn't
Wasn't.
Andrew take it over? I think that's what it was then. Andrew kind of took over.
Yeah, but I mean, it wasn't paid for in the first place.
No, it wasn't.
He
It
just
wasn't
redid
paid
the
for. It
papers,
kind
I
of
suppose.
renewed it, you know, or on his name, and then we kept on going. And there were about, what was it, 2, 3 years that we just practically lived on commodities. And there were times, to send a letter, it was 3 cents. And there were times we didn't have no 3 cents in the house to send a letter. So,
Well, at that time, then your brothers and sisters were at home. Then everyone,
yes,
and
they couldn't buy a job.
yeah.
They looked all over for jobs, and there was just no money. People couldn't hire. They just did without.
What type stuff then did your brothers do, especially, because the boys are usually outside? Did they trap or hunt or?
Oh yes, they did that. They helped with whatever they could when it was, spring's work, and in the fall too. They did what they could. Sometimes they hired out for a short time, and then they were back home again. And some of us girls would go sometimes if a lady had a baby. We'd go there for 4 or 5 days, maybe a week, something like that, and then to help out and back home again. But that was, you couldn't hardly get anything for, I don't even know what the wages were.
About $3, I suppose, a week for that.
Oh, I don't think so, because when I worked, what was I, 17, when I worked north of Hertzfield for a family that had their 5th child then. And I worked there for, I don't know. I think I started in August and I worked there until November. Then I got $3 a week, and that was the biggest wage I could ever get. Then that fall, Irene and I went out to Milwaukee, and we got $5 a week. And we thought we were really getting in the money. But then you did a lot with it too, because those days they didn't wear slacks, Not much anyway. And a dress was 75 cents. So, times have changed, you get more money, but everything costs more too. That time you didn't get much, but it didn't cost much.
Do you think in proportion, though, that we're able to buy more with our money now because we get a lot more money? You think you have more stuff now than
Oh,
you
yeah.
had then?
I
so.
think so.
I think if you put a month in now, even though your clothing is high, I think you could still buy more. I mean, I think you could be fair better, I would say. Because even when everything was cheap, let's say a good suit at that time would cost $17 to $25. That would almost take you 2 months to earn, though.
Really?
You see, to buy a suit, you still almost have to work 2 months. A good automobile tire was around $16, $18. Well, you had to work 2 months at a rate of $8 a month to buy one tire, and they only went half as far as they do now. You can buy the cheapest tire now made, and it'll go 5 times further than the best one did then. Of course, the roads are better now too. You've got to add a little of that. But when I worked there, I helped make hay, and I got $20 a month for the haying season. Then after the haying season, he said he's going to pay less, but he never said how much less. Well, still, I hauled 4 loads of hay a day, 2 in the forenoon, 2 in the afternoon, loaded them by hand, and those were mostly the thistles. They had 17 cows to milk. Many times I milked them alone. He never helped, but she would help sometimes. Then 2 Shetland ponies to curry and keep for the kids. 4 work horses had to brush and keep clean and harness them. And 2 big bulls, they weighed 1,700 pounds apiece. I had to carry the water because they were too vicious to let out. And of course it wasn't too far from the water tank, probably 50 feet. But 2 big bulls drink a lot of water if you carry it. Then he had 17 calves to carry water for in the same barn, because he didn't have the money to buy a pipe to pipe the water in the barn. And I hauled all that hay and milked all the cows. I had 115 head other cattle to take care of. And then he offered me $8 for the last month. That was in November already, late November. And I said to him, after Christmas, I went back to him and I says, what did I do wrong? And he said, why? Well, he says, you don't expect to pay me $8 for all that work I did, do you? Well, he said, yeah. Well, I said, what did I do wrong? And he says, well, nothing. He says, in fact, I think you was good a hired man as I ever had. Well, I says, I don't think I should settle for $8. I said, and go out and catch a few skunks and play for a few dances, and I got $8. And I said, and then the rest of the day I can sleep. Well, he said, I haven't got any more money, but you go out there and pick out one of the calves that you fed all summer. You know them. And he says, will that be a settlement? And I said, yeah. So I picked up a Hereford bull calf. Excellent. I knew him all. It was a purebred calf as far as that goes, but he didn't have the papers at all. Well marked. So I took the calf.